Buenos días, buenas tardes, y buenas noches, bonjour, bonsoir. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, wherever you may be. J. Slater case. And just a quick follow up. Busy day yesterday, no video yesterday. And today, just a quick follow up on the analysis I did on the bizarre use of Jay's phone in his final hours there. If you didn't see that video, go through it because this is just a kind of addendum to that. Two final points I want to make. Because to me, it is that phone use that is absolutely extraordinary. And yes, a number of you mentioned there were two phones in play, maybe three, who knows. But to me, that's not really the point. The point is that one phone that is recognized as Jay Slater's phone just has these remarkable absences. And the number one, I've got to say, is no message to or from anyone outside of Tenerife. I just find that extraordinary. 19-year-old lad on holiday abroad without family for the first time. And here we have this extraordinary night, which in a bizarre kind of way culminates in him saying, off my undies, stolen an AP, off to sell it. And following that up, there is not one person from Lancashire, from his family, that he contacts or contacts him. I actually don't find it credible. I know you can say it's possible. Almost anything is possible. But the series of coincidences that goes with this bizarre telephone activity tells me that it's not Jay in charge of that phone. That's my case. That's it. It's a red flag. Accident group like to go on about evidence, lack of evidence, reporting it to the authorities and that. There's no one to report it to. It's just my take on what I think is the most bizarre and unusual and unlikely telephone activity you could possibly have from a 19-year-old blundering around in the Masca Mountains before he dies. No one in Lancashire, no one in the family, no one is contacted, and they're not contacting him. So that was my main point in the last video. But my addendum here is two additional points about the phone activity that we need to consider, and they're very, very important points. I'm sure you all remember early on when Lucy was being interviewed, and Lucy's behavior is very strange because Lucy, for the first 2 or 3 days, was non-stop interview, interview, interview. Let me get the story out there, and then silence. No searching for Jay, off the island, nothing to say ever since then. We talk about Brandon's silence, Brandon totally silent. Same goes for Lucy. Same goes for Lucy, apart from those few days where I believe her boss, whoever her boss may be, one of her bosses, was directing her to put all this out there. The cynic might say it was Lucy's interviews that were driving the GoFundMe. Yeah, cha-ching, cha-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. But after Lucy did her initial burst of verbal diarrhea, she's silent and has been ever since. Almost ever since. She did have words with Haley Comet, but basically silent. And, and yet, I think possibly the key thing that she did say, and it may have been a mistake, was in one of those early interviews, Lucy said, describing Jay's condition up in the mountains when his phone cut off, she actually said Jay had no phone. And I pointed it out at the time. I said, this is an unusual thing to say because there is a world of difference between Jay's phone had died, Jay had no battery, and specifically what Lucy said, Jay had no phone. Now, of course, there was a certain amount of pushback, and that's valid. I'm sure there are people that have said when they lost the charge on their phone, it's no longer operative, dead battery. Yeah, could well be that people say, I've got no phone. But in this situation, when we're describing Jay's situation, what he had, what he didn't have, his plight, What were his, I don't know, last resorts of surviving up there? Specifically to say Jay had no phone, it tells me that that could well be true. That it's not Jay's phone had died, Jay's battery had run out, Jay's phone was useless. It could well be Lucy made a slit there. And when she said Jay had no phone, she meant exactly Jay had no phone. The implication to me is someone else had it. Not that Jay's phone had disappeared into the wilderness, someone else had it. Jay had no phone were Lucy's words. Keep that in mind. Dismiss it if you wish as another way of saying Jay's phone had died, but it's not the same thing. I think some of us grasp that. The AG that are slightly slow in figuring these things out and not linguistically rather analytical, they might still say it's the same thing. It's not the same thing. But the meat and drink of this one is the whole conversation about a very important phone moment that never happened. And it is that immortal line, perhaps these words from the Welsh bard himself, poet extraordinaire, the person who has, let's just say, a magic way of communicating, El Slugtardo, yeah, the prince of poetry and prose himself, when he came out with his immortal line, and I'm sure you all remember it, ah, 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 if ever, if ever a prophetic line expressed deep felt emotion, there it is, but we all heard it. Yes, Ivor Lovelace's quote of the decade. Ah, 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 ah. Well, that was an important moment too, because I was about to go into some Jay's phone details that I think would have been very interesting and very revealing. Well, obviously they were of importance, otherwise I wouldn't have mentioned it. And I'm referring, if I can find the link, I'll put it in the description of the video, if I can find it. But I'm sure you know that live where we had that weird and wonderful in her own way character Sharon Maud, tripping over herself in welcoming glee as Ayub pops up in her live. It was her live. Sharon, Ayub, and Luggy were all together. What a trio that is. Um, and it was Ayub who, for some unknown reason, it didn't fit the conversation. I should rather say the blabber, because these three people really don't converse. If conversation is establishing, some kind of um, common feeling there, they're just, saying random things. And Ayub came out with this random thing. And I think his point was how off so many of the accident group and content creators have been. He'd suddenly thought of this example and he wanted to mention it. I don't know why. It didn't really fit the blabber. But for whatever reason, Ayub's great example of how the content creators, the foul play group, and everyone else had got it so wrong, he started down a track of, you know what's mad? I won't do the accent. You know what's mad? Yeah. Look at this and listen. Interesting that word listen is there. He said, you know what's mad? Yeah, look at this and listen. Look at how so wrong everyone is. And it will probably come out in the summary of the documentary. I'm not sure what he means by summary of the documentary. Maybe he's thinking of like the message, the theme of the documentary, something like that. He may have meant the inquest instead of the summary, but I can only tell you what Ayub said. I can't, Ayub's mind is on a different level. I can't actually tell you what he means. I can only give you an idea of what I think he might mean. Yeah, you know what's mad? Yeah. Look at this and listen. Look at how so wrong everyone is. And it will probably come out in the summary of the documentary or whatever. Here's the important bit. Ayub says, but I was chatting to one of the team. Oh, good Lord, who's the team? Crystal Palace, West Ham? I was chatting to one of the team and they said to me they've got his phone. The family got his phone. And when he went down, there it cuts off. Because Luggy's heard enough. And Luggy's in there immediately with like I say, the most prophetic pronouncement that's ever come from the bard from West Wales. It's interesting that Luggy cut him off there. I wonder if Luggy was just concerned when he heard this one of the team, but it wasn't enough to cut Ayub off. And then Luggy heard the word phone, got his phone, talking about Jay, got his phone. The family have got his phone. I think Luggy's okay with that because that's a statement of fact. The family did end up with Jay's phone. But where Luggy cuts Ayub off is when Luggy starts to say when he went down, when he went down. At that point, Luggy has to cut him off. I believe because Luggy realizes where Ayub's going with this, and he's going with the last communication, either the one to Lucy or quite probably the last claimed communication, listen, I'm not going to make it. Because that, listen, I'm not going to make it, did appear in the documentary and did not appear in the inquest. So going back into Ayub's statement, when he says it will probably come out in the summary of the documentary, something tells me Ayub knew that something in Jay's phone was planned to come out in the documentary. Otherwise, why would he said? Why wouldn't have Ayub said if he didn't know anything about this last text, this last snap? If he didn't know anything about it, if I was like, oh, apparently, one of the team told me there's another message out there, why didn't he say, well, it'll probably come out in the inquest? It'll probably come out in the press. It'll probably come out somehow. It'll probably come out on the grapevine, in social media, on YouTube. Why does he go with in the summary of the documentary? My only logical explanation is because Ayub knows that particular, listen, I'm not going to make it, is going to come out in the documentary. And Luggy should have, if he could rewind and go back in time, should have interrupted there and said, And Sean Maud comes out with TMI, TMI, too much information. Well, my question for Sean is why, Sharon Maud. My question for Sharon Maud is why too much information? We're trying to find out exactly what happened to Jay Slater. How can you have too much information when we're trying to find out what happened to the poor lad? I would say not enough information. When Luggy is saying, I would say NEI, Luggy, not enough information. Tell us, we want transparency. We want Ayub to give his version. We want Ayub to tell us what he knows and what maybe the world doesn't know. What's wrong with that? If this were all an accident, there can't be TMI, Sharon. It's just an accident. The more we know, the better it is. The clearer the explanation of how the accident happened, surely. Those of us that think there's a cover-up would say that moment, is, of course, covering up for something that Luggy doesn't want the world to know. And it's nothing to do with the family. It's nothing to do with the family. I mean, we know that Luggy and Chris like to use Debbie and the family as this human shield, or we can't tell you the truth because the family might be overwhelmed with grief and hand-wringing. No, it's nothing to do with the family. It's to do with something on that phone that Luggy at that moment didn't want Ayub revealing. To me, simple as that. I wanted to put it out there then, I think. So once again, we go back to Ayub's words. It will probably come out in the summary of the documentary or whatever, but he says, I was chatting to one of the team. Now let's pause on that word team. I joked just now. AG don't get jokes very, very quickly. They're probably now writing, how can Duncant think the team could be Crystal Palace or West Ham? I was joking. So who's the team here? Well, I don't think the team is Luggy, Chris and Adrian, the search team. I was chatting to one of the team. I don't think it's them because Luggy's in the live. If Luggy's one of the team, you'd say, well, when I was talking to you, Luggy, or when I was talking to your mate Chris, or when I was talking to... I don't think you'd say with Luggy in the live when I was talking to one of the team. One of the team is referring to the team that's not part of that live. And I don't think the team is Rocky. He would just say my mate. I don't think there's any team beyond Rocky. And why mention a team anyway? If you are a Bitcoin dealer and railway construction manager, and you're on holiday in Tenerife, there's no team. What team is he talking about? You're just on holiday. I can't recall the last time I went on holiday and I started talking about, oh, the last time I spoke to my team. What the hell are you talking about? To me, the only possible team, and if we define team as a group of people you work with to achieve a certain end, whether it be business or sport, I would say we're talking about business here, business team, sales team. I would say that's wild guess here. Lucy, Brandon, Jay, Brad, maybe Josh. It's the teenagers, the team. Yeah, I think so. I was chatting to one of the team, and they said to me, they've got his phone. The family got his phone. Now, as I was saying this, if we detach the family got his phone as an afterthought, which it is because it appears after the phrase they've got his phone, if we detach that secondary thought, it comes out as someone in the team, which I think is probably Brandon, Lucy, etc., got his phone. That's what he says. I was chatting to one of the team and they said to me, they got his phone. Hello. Isn't that what we're saying all along? That's what my last video was all about. Someone's using Jay's phone. And here's Ayub telling us, yes, that's true. Yeah. Talking to one of the team and they've got his phone. Then, maybe because Ayub was like, hang on, I got to change that. He then adds very quickly, oh, the family have got his phone. So the they've got his phone isn't to do with the team, it's the family. But that doesn't really hang together. I was chatting to one of the team and they said to me they've got his phone. The family got his phone. Now, in defense of Ayub, he does add the family got his phone quite naturally and rather quickly, but he's quite smart, Ayub, when he's defending himself or putting something out. He's had plenty of practice. He pleaded not guilty to his narco charges, so he's had plenty of experience lying or trying to lie and get away with it. And he does sound reasonable there. Yeah, they've got his phone. The family have got his phone. So I will give him the benefit of the doubt on that. That they've got his phone. He then has to clarify. He meant the family have got his phone. Yeah, someone in the team has told him the family's got his phone. Okay, kind of 50-50 on it, but I'm just reporting what Ayub said. They've got his phone, the family got his phone. And when he went down, what do you think comes after that? Whatever comes after that, obviously, is something that Ayub thinks is important to mention because it will show the whole world how wrong Foul Play Group and the dissenters, the objectors, are to the accident theory. Something that is going to show us to be incorrect and stupid, I would imagine. And I would imagine that one thing would be the evidence that the accident group and Debbie and the rest of them hoped would be the definitive statement this must be an accident. Listen, I'm not going to make it. Because anyone just before they pass away saying, listen, I'm not going to make it, cannot possibly be suggesting that they're not going to make it because some third party has a knife to their throat or something. It's going to be a natural. It's going to be a natural. I'm not going to make it. I'm out here in the wilderness. So I think that was Ayub's point. He was going to say, and he thought he was being constructive by showing how stupid the content creators were, by saying they don't even understand that, we've got this last piece of evidence that shows it must have been an accident. But Luggy doesn't want that out there. Of course not. That's got to be saved for the documentary. And it would raise too many questions. Luggy knows that because it's a fake message. It has to be saved for the documentary, for everyone to go nuts over this added information. But for Ayub to release that prize, that little golden nugget of, yeah, this seals the deal, doesn't it? It's not right for it to happen on a live. with Sharon Maud present and with Luggy present. This is where Luggy has to jump in with the ah. So just to wrap this up, I would say that the most important the most important phone activity on Jay's phone is probably that last snap that I think a lot of us think is totally fake, totally made up, never happened. Yeah, it's there. Documentary got a recreated image of it, but it's not Jay writing that going down a ravine. I think we all feel that, apart from obviously the nutcases, the cranks, the deluded, the fool, and the moronic accident group. Normal people feel that ain't a real message. And Ayub thought it was a good idea to tell the world that in that live. Luggy disagreed, but I'm going to say it one more time. That is possibly the most important phone activity, whether it be fake or not, that was never talked about. Again, had there been an investigation, we would have found out a whole lot more about it. Yeah. At the inquest, DCI Higson didn't even find it. Yeah. There is no phone activity after 8:52 a.m. And yet, there is. Listen, I'm not going to make it. These things don't go together, but it doesn't matter for the documentary. It matters for the inquest. That's why no one said a word. Ayub, shut up. Luggy, Sharon Maud, everyone, shut up. Don't mention the most important phone message. Leave it for the documentary. And then we can all relax and say, there's the proof it was all an accident. All right. Possibly that is the last word on how I see that very, very unusual activity on Jay's phone. Just smacks of someone else writing on Jay's phone. This all came up just as a reminder as that Scottish lady, Elizabeth Ross in Greece. It was found that after her death, her alleged killer was using her phone and sending messages back to Elizabeth's home in Scotland. And I did point out, even in that case, very strange that the parents didn't feel there was something off. And noticeable that even there were messages going back home, not with Jay Slater. Not one single message goes back home at any point. All right, I will say hasta luego, adios, hasta la vista. See you next time.